Hey, welcome to Coffee with the Coach, and this is Jeff Reinebold and my buddy Magic Mike. And Magic Mike's a little bit worse for wear. I heard you guys had a little staff meeting the other day, and a beer festival broke out.
I don't know who's told you this. We're fine. We were having a meeting ahead of the season, which starts in, well, like 70 odd days, man. We're so close. Like the next time your show comes out, we're 1 month from football. Can you believe it? Because it seems like yesterday we were speaking the Friday after the Super Bowl, and we're like, what are we going to do for the next 7 months? But yes, we're very close. We had a lovely time in Dublin, and thank you for FaceTiming us as well.
I was, you know what was I've tried. I wanted you to get the waiter because I wanted to buy you guys around from all the way across the ocean, but we weren't able to get that done. There weren't any waiters outside. But hey, let me ask you a question about that meeting. Right, I saw a lot of beer glasses in front of you, but I didn't see anybody who was taking notes or anybody. What kind of meeting is that? Irish meeting?
You'll find out in September when we're, kicking off the new season, I guess. But yeah, it was a good meeting. A lot of discussion was had about, field goals, the new rules coming into the season, television, etc. So a very good meeting. But we're here now, and it's Sunday. Have you been enjoying the Euros, Jeff?
Obviously, I have thoroughly enjoyed the Euros. And hey, how about my Italians? Right? Austria, I thought Austria played their skin off, but
I don't want anybody that isn't an NFL fan. I don't want anybody to ever say to me from now on, "Oh, the NFL is boring" or something like that. That game last night, until that goal went in, was one of the worst games I have ever, as a football fan or soccer fan, watched in my life. No, look, it's good for Italy, but I'll ask you this and put you on the spot because I don't have to answer. Is it coming home, Jeff? England against Germany on Tuesday.
I would love for that to be the case. The thing about, and again, I got to say this, I don't know anything about soccer. I don't know if the ball's got air or feathers in it. I really don't. But I watch athletes and I see England is so much better. Like, for example, the last game they played, was it Czech Republic or whoever they played? I can't remember.
Czech Republic, yeah.
Yeah. They were so much better athletically at almost every position than the opposition, and I don't know the strategic parts of the game enough to be able to comment on that, but I just think that they don't, for whatever reason, they don't play as big or as athletic as they should play. Because, man, you watch some of those guys just are really, really incredible players. So I think it's going to be interesting to see. Not my choice, but the team that I think is going to win is going to be France. But are the Danes for real? That's the one that's capturing everybody's attention over here.
We're going to find out soon enough. And the good thing about next week is, and Jeff will make a little announcement maybe during the week, there's no football or there's no Euro soccer on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday before the quarterfinals start of the weekend. So we'll try and jump in an episode there maybe in those days. But talking about England, Germany, you've got a big German to kick the show off, haven't you?
Yeah, one of the biggest Germans, 6'8".
That's good, yeah.
6'8". Yeah, das ist sehr gut. When Sebastian Vollmer played, he was 6'8". I think his heaviest, he got around 345. When you see the guy today, he's obviously not lost any of his height. He's still 6'8", but he's about 255 pounds and has really done a great job of taking care of himself. Father of 3 kids, tremendous guy, and really a great guy. He's going to talk a lot about the Patriots, about his Patriot experience, about Tom Brady. I think your fans are going to really enjoy listening to Sebastian. And we're going to take a little bitty tour of Germany, and he's going to take us through the cities that are lined up to bid to host an NFL game. So you, as an NFL fan there, Michael, you and me might be sitting, at some beer hall having a beer next fall if the NFL is successful and expands to Germany too.
I can't wait. And look, if any country deserves a game, after the games in London as well, it's Germany. And I think for us, it's a win-win. We get to go to hopefully 4 games in London and a game in Germany. I mean, my wife will never see me from October to November, but I'll be happy enough, and it'll be good. We've also got another guy on as well, haven't we? Byron Chamberlain.
Byron Chamberlain, 2-time Super Bowl winner for the Denver Broncos, was a Pro Bowl tight end. and he's on, and he's going to talk a lot about his career, about what made those Bronco teams so special. And it's really interesting, and I know you as a Bronco fan will appreciate this. Listen to what he says when we ask him about where those two Bronco teams that went back to back, where they should rest in Super Bowl history. And I think it's really an interesting story, and his story about putting his locker next to Shannon Sharpe is an all-time classic. So tune in or stay with us for the second half of the show on that. Mikey, let's get going. It's awesome to be show number 55. Man, oh man. Thank you to the tribe for making this happen. It gets bigger and better every week we do it.
Yeah, and we're hoping to go out live again in the next few weeks, maybe towards the start of the season. But for now, here is Sebastian Vollmer.
All right, we are doing the double nickel today. 55 shows, 55 times we've come at you. We got a little special treat for you today. Man behind the beard and underneath the baseball cap, doing his best to be incognito, is ex-New England Patriots Super Bowl winner, Pro Bowler, John Madden Ultimate Protectors team, which is a huge honor, by the way, Sebastian. All done by a young guy who started playing this game at the local level in Karst, Germany, and rose through the levels of football to go to the University of Houston and then be drafted in the second round by the New England Patriots. Sebastian Vollmer, welcome to the show, Sebastian.
Yo, appreciate it. Didn't know I'm a special guest here. 55 already? Come
55,
on.
My man. Hey, speaking of which, I was going to ask you this question. It popped in my brain last night, which is a scary thing. But who's the best number 55 you ever had as a teammate? Who is the best player who wore 55?
Junior Seau.
Junior Seau. Okay, tell me a great Junior Seau story. Number 55, the best 55 you ever played with.
So obviously he was with the Patriots, left. Well, I mean, towards the end of his career, came to the Patriots, left again, and came back. So that's when I was in. I think I was a rookie. It might have been my second year. So this guy has played at that point in the league for like 20 years, 19 years, whatever it was. So he shows back up, and I mean, it's that immediate, like the way he carries himself, right? Like, I mean, he goes right back in with the speeches, the pregame, the postgame, and all that. And then he had this phrase, right? And it was always buddy or buddy. People always say, hey, if he calls you buddy, he actually likes you. If he calls you buddy, it's like, well, maybe not so much. I don't know. My theory is, because I noticed it, I mean, the football team has a lot of people going through the building, right? At some point, I think everybody, hey, buddy, because you have no idea who that guy is. Especially a bunch of rookies walking around, a bunch of practice waters, and, this guy's been in the league for 20 years. So like, yeah, you'd be gone in 3 weeks. I've been around for 20. But he was just such a guy. I mean, he was like, so I was a guy that prided himself to be in the locker room at 5 a.m., right? So you walk in there, and he is like done with the sauna, working out, running. He's playing his ukulele in a corner somewhere, and it's just like smiling, having a good day, and just like, man, I mean, that guy I got to figure out.
You know what? It's amazing you bring him up, because I had a chance to get to know him, Sebastian, and what a wonderful human being. I mean, maybe one of the nicest guys you'd ever want to meet, and just such a tragic way for him to leave the world, and one that frankly surprised a lot of us who never ever saw that coming. Junior was so good at creating that everything's okay Polynesian facade, but he was really, really struggling with a lot of things in his life, and it was really sad to see that end the way it ended.
Yeah, I mean,
great player.
Again, it was my rookie year, and I used to have so much respect for the older players. I can't say I knew him well, but he did make an impact in the short time he was there for me. What are you gonna say? I mean, it's and then the impact. So obviously, he didn't start his career with the Patriots, but the impact after his death. I mean, Bill flew out. I mean, it sent shockwaves. They had a meeting about it, and I mean, it's. Death always tragic, but he certainly left an impact on a lot of people in and around the league.
All right, tell me about that when you're a young kid. You drafted in the second round, so obviously they think you can play, right? They don't draft they don't draft second rounders on a flyer. But
I don't think Bill said that, because he was like, I remember him drafting me, and I was like, hey, I'm so excited. Yeah, you suck. I was like, I'm really excited to come. You got a long way to go, buddy. I went, yeah, okay.
Wait a second now. When he called you to tell you you were picked in the second round, how many guys were picked? 50, 60 maybe?
I was picked 56, I believe. 56 or 59. Can't remember.
56 of all the players in the draft, you get picked, right? And he calls you up.
Nice.
He's like, you got a long way to go, kid.
That's it. I mean, now looking back, the typical Patriots thing was like, we drafted him in the second round. He probably wasn't thinking he's going the second round. Let's make sure he doesn't get big hit. And I don't think, to be honest with you, I mean, you saw me play. I don't think I had it figured out back then. Well, not that I figured out now. Got to weasel my way through, but I mean, it worked out, and I'm certainly thankful for him and the whole organization. But it's an eye opener coming from college to the league, no doubt.
Oh, you know what? Julian Edelman told me that when he got drafted, which he was drafted late, 7th round, I think.
Yeah.
And he was a quarterback at Kent State, and the Patriots call him and say, kind of the same way, kind of low key. We don't know what you are, but we think you're a football player. So,
right.
It's just, it wasn't exactly like they were pumping his tires.
I don't think we had a strong draft class now that I think about it. 2009, we had 12 guys, I believe. We had 4 guys in the second round. Chung, obviously, still playing. I mean, panned out really well. We had Ron Brace, Darius Butler, and me in the second round. We had, I was thinking like who's still around. Julian, well, until recently, in the 7th round. And then, just thinking about it. Anyways, we had a lot of guys, but they weeded us out pretty quick, too. I was like, nah. But it was a strong team still.
Yeah, you guys were a good football team that you were going into.
Right.
Who did when you first went into the O-line room, right? Yeah. Who was the alpha dog in the O-line room back in those days?
Matt Light.
Was he?
Well, depends on your definition of alpha. The loudest, certainly Matt Light. I mean, he was a tackle, so I oriented myself on him, try to emulate his style and all that stuff. But I mean, we had Logan Menkins. To me, one of the best guards has ever played. He just very quiet guy, but on the field, that's not a guy you want to mess with. He was just such really like a quiet leader. But as a rookie, it's like I came in and I think it was the 8th tackle. We had like 18 guys in the room, and then being told,
wait. You're a 2nd round draft pick and you're the 8th tackle.
You know how it rolls. So he puts the depth chart on the board, and it's like, I mean, every name is in front of me. I'm just like, okay, I got 3 weeks to make this thing, and then but every day you kind of try to make your way up there, and they cut other guys and just trying to survive.
I was gonna say, well, take us through the emotional side of what it's like when you are looking at that depth chart, and every day that somebody's not there, or you move up ahead of a guy, or somebody moves ahead of you, what that does to you mentally, and how you're able to keep your focus with all that going on.
For me, I think it's always the same thing. At least for me, it was. So coming into where you saw me play in Dusseldorf, I mean, I came in, I had no idea what I was doing. So you kind of work your way up there. Then you go to college. Then you think you have it figured out. I mean, we played together you coached me in the European All-Star team and stuff. So you feel like you got to figure it out. But then you go to college and be like, okay, I weigh 220 pounds and all the linemen are 300. I got a way to go. Then you make it to the league, and kind of like the same thing. You're about the size, you got the strength, but you don't have it figured out. I mean, all of a sudden you got the Dwight Freeney's, the Junior Seau's, you name it. All of a sudden they're coming after you. So I think as a rookie, that's okay. Like, I don't think personally it's the best thing that can happen. You gotta earn your spot. You're not just given just because, they draft you in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd round, whatever it is. You work your way up, you make it. I think for the veteran, though, having that rookie coming up behind you and you see him every day, like kind of jumping the spot and coming after you, I think that could be a little bit of an issue if you don't have the self-confidence. So I think that depends on the player. But I mean, in the end, I don't think you can concentrate on the other guys. I mean, you practice against yourself kind of thing. You gotta get better.
All right, now I've seen this happen so many times, and I wondered if it happened to you. where you have that aha moment where all of a sudden, you know, the line coach has been on your ass. You've gotten beat. You know, again, you told me about Freeney putting the spin move on you the first time you played him. But that moment when I can do this, I belong here. I know I can. I'm good enough.
So I don't think I ever went in thinking I'm not good enough. It was more. So I always had the same motto. I was okay with making a mistake, but I was not okay with making it twice. Right. Felt like it was kind of part of the learning experience. Obviously, don't want to make it, but you know, it's also realistically there are going to be some issues they got to work out. And so I knew. So by the time the season started, I was the third tackle, the backup guy, the swing tackle. But it was good enough for them to create packages. Like I was a tight end, get me in, big packages, you know, all those things, which really helped. But then Matt Light blew out his knee, dislocated his kneecap, and he was out for a few weeks. And that was the first one was Vandenbosch against was the throwback game against Tennessee, and there I felt pretty good. I had a little help because we had a snowstorm in October, which then I didn't really never played in the snow before, but it really helps an offensive lineman. I mean, Fatty knows where you got to go. You know, defensive end obviously struggling. It's like kind of you know pig on ice, and the next game was against Freeney, and I did pretty well. However, you got to say, obviously you have Brady that stands at, you know, 6, 7, 8 yards. It's not at 11, 12 like other quarterbacks. I had Logan Mankins next to me that helped on the inside. So all I had to do is like, don't get run over and don't let him beat you at 6 yards. There was still some situations where, like I said, double spin move, just like, whatever. And just like, turn on, Dom! But again, like he had like 4 sacks the week before, and then against us, he didn't have a sack. So those things, I kind of give you confidence, and then you roll into the season. And then so Matt came back, and I remember then Scar essentially came up to me and was like, "Okay, you're not playing left tackle, but from now on you're going to be the starting right tackle." And then the former starter kind of got the boot, which is always a weird situation, especially because he took me under his wing a little bit, well not a little bit, quite a bit, and so you're taking somebody's job and. You know, the year after that, he was cut and got hurt and all those things. But that's kind of where I felt like it was pretty good. And then I made, I think, second team All-Pro my second year where I felt, okay, I kind of hang here.
All right. Now, Scar, Dante Scarnecchia, your offensive line coach, one of the greatest that ever coached.
No doubt.
I don't know how. I mean, he was in New England for how many years? Because he went through coach after head coach after head coach and was able to stay because it's so well respected.
Well, he stayed there, and then I think he went to Indianapolis for like 2 years and then came back. I mean, it must have been...
I think he went with Meyer for a couple of years to Indianapolis and then came back.
I mean, around 40? I don't know. But, I mean, it's
the craziest thing in the world. It's the longest NFL tenure I can remember. Even some of those old Cowboy guys, he stayed longer than that. What made him so unique, so good, Sebastian?
Attention to detail. So... there's another thing which as a player can get quite annoying because you feel like what is he harping on? I mean, we're talking about inches, we're talking about like really millimeters. Okay, your hands are not right. Okay, you're a little slow at your stance. Look how your knee is flaring out. Whatever it is, really minute things in the moment. And what I didn't understand is, and Bill makes that clear pretty well as well. So I remember we beat that game I was talking to you about against Tennessee. We beat them 59-0. And me and Logan made a call where we changed the blocking scheme. So I pulled behind them, like Logan blocked out the defensive end. I pulled behind him, got his linebacker. And Lawrence Maroney scored a 60, 70-yard running touchdown. And we were all like hyped and, you know, hey, we made the right call, everything great, blah, blah. So we're going to the sideline. And I mean, we get verbally assaulted. Because this was not the program. This is not
by Bill or by Scar.
By Scar. You know, and I mean Bill later on, but I mean, he wasn't probably worried about the offensive lineman in that moment. But we made a call which wasn't allowed in that moment. But I mean, the thought process behind it though is, I think, well, the next week against Indianapolis, that's not going to work. Like, stick to the script. Don't like do stuff on the fly because this can go into now I'm going to do that, or now I'm going to pull, now I'm going to whatever it is. And back then in my rookie, I didn't understand it. And then you kind of grow with the situation. And he is so good at not letting little things become big things. And every year you start over with minute things. He treats you like a rookie and he explains every play, every technique. I mean, we talking about how you stand right at the huddle, how the play call goes, what is a play action? I mean, it's the whole thing. And like he said one time, it's like, if one veteran, if it makes click for one play in one situation, because I've been doing this 100 times to you, it's worth it. So you start over. There's never anything's being skipped. And he truly, it's tough to play for him. There's no doubt about that. But he truly made me the best player I could have possibly been. I mean, no doubt about it. There got to be so much appreciation for that man.
All right, now, did you ever teach him any German words?
Probably things I mumbled under my breath. I picked up on the side. Nothing officially.
Yeah. Oh, that is funny. Because Sebastian's School of German is one of the all-time great ones. Now, how many guys did you actually put through school? Could you get? I saw Brady's, and that was priceless. Yeah. Fans, go to YouTube and go to Sebastian's School of German, and it is absolutely hilarious. How did that come about? It was when you were hurt, right?
Correct. It was my last year. Actually, I was injured reserve, and I was like, well, I got nothing else to do. So we came up. Well, I take that back. I did that in college at U of H before, and I kind of died down. And then, honestly, it was kind of like an NFL thing. And then we just asked a couple of guys, and Thomas. I mean, he's such a awesome super dude. Like, you ask him something, and he will do whatever he can do to help you. He's one of the most amazing guys I've ever met. So he was the first guy who did it, and he was great at it. And I mean, there was one situation which wasn't actually the funny part, but I'm showing in a play which I hadn't seen before either. So we both wanted to be spontaneous. I'm showing this play against Miami, and he's like, "Oh, I remember that." And I was like, "Hey, yeah, whatever." So, and I promise, I have not shown it to him, and he's like, "Yeah, well, it's third quarter, second play. I'm going to throw this to Wes, and he is going to do." I'm like, "What?" So, anyways, but I blew my mind. Just the memory of, and it's a couple of years ago. It wasn't like it just happened last week. Just the memory and football understanding and situationally awareness he brings to the team, unbelievable. But anyway, so we asked a few guys, and Julian was one of them. Danny was great. Amendola. And then we did a group of them, like Patrick Chung was there, and we probably did, I don't know, 10, 15 guys, and they were all pretty great.
I'm telling you, fans, you got to check it out because it is priceless. You will laugh forever. All right, now I want to talk about the Patriots a little bit because we got so many Patriots fans that listen. One of the things that, always there's turnover in football. That's the way it is. No two teams are ever the same year for year. But there's a guy that has decided to call it quits in New England that has been in the shadows his entire time. And I think he's been there with Bill the entire time, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. Mm-hmm. And do you want to talk about Ernie and what his role is and what you guys thought as players? Because it's really fascinating to me.
So he is, or was, truly a man in the shadows. Like, I don't think, like, he was around, kind of really, nobody knew what he was really doing, kind of thing. It was always a little, wouldn't say it was secretive, but he certainly had his own way of doing stuff. Where he really came into the picture for the players was on Fridays. So, you get your installs Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday is the like red zone, red area deal. And he was in charge of the scout team. So he would pick what a scout team offense and defensive players. So for me, interestingly, obviously was the defense, but he would pick plays, not just say we play whoever, Miami. He wouldn't pick the plays they did last week. They would go, okay, this college coach, his brother-in-law, his friend coaches at this high school, and they ran the wishbone. I don't know. So he would come up with the craziest potential plays we could ever see. And he would line them up against our plays where you really had to think quick and hard. Chances of that actually happening were so minute, but he still wanted to see if he can, figure it out, if he can think on our feet. And if it does happen, he wanted us to be prepared, obviously. So he would try to get the hardest plays lined up against our best plays and kind of see if we can still score.
Okay, now I have been told that the Butler play on the goal line against Seattle, he had done that against Malcolm on Friday before the game in red zone period. And actually they scored a touchdown on it. The scout team scored a touchdown on it. But it was a play that Seattle hadn't run, but he said, you got to be alert for the vertical and the under. And that was when he stepped in front and made that interception. That's an incredible story inside the Patriots, the way they do things on Friday. What Rob Ryan said to me that he would go into Ernie's office and Ernie would shut his computer because he didn't want him to see what was in there. I mean, the guy was like, he was like a savant, and he and Bill go back a long, long way, correct?
I think they went to college together. I think they might have been college roommates, or at least good friends. And he has been around, and I mean, he made it was a big part of the Patriots' success, no doubt. Like, he was so prepared. He knew everything he kind of was involved. Now, Bill says that. He was involved in any and every aspect of the Patriots organization, really from scouting to player evaluations to the plays I was just talking about. He was, I think, like Bill's confidant, as in, let's run things by him, kind of see what he thinks. And he was truly, I think, like a football mastermind. He was just not as in the press and everything like Bill, but I think they both really played well off of each other and made a great team, no doubt.
How big a loss do you think that's going to be, that he would lose a guy who's been a confidant for him for so many years?
Try to assume. I mean, that's the way. Well, I don't know. Bill is Bill, so I think he gets away with. Well, gets away is probably the wrong term, but he can adjust so well to any and other situations. Like, I've never seen him. Not that he would like confine me or anything, but I've never seen him say, "Oh man, dwelling on the past." I think it's truly that it is what it is. I mean, well, he's gone. Now I got to figure that out.
Wait a second. We're on to Cincinnati is legit. It's not
no doubt. No doubt. I mean, I think
that's the way he lives his life. That's the way he coaches. You were on to the next thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly lessons to be learned, but I mean, once they are learned, once they are analyzed and all those things, I mean, you move on. What is it? It only steals energy. Like, if you're sitting there 3 weeks later and be like, well, we should have done this and that. Well, we didn't. So if you're playing them again, we will. But I mean, you're moving on. So the Mondays. So Sunday, let's say we play Sunday. Sunday night is certainly tough for coaches. I mean, you know that they evaluate, they grade, all that stuff. But I mean, the next game is coming. So that sand clock is ticking. It's I mean, you gotta have 7 days. You gotta get prepared. So Monday, you already gotta prepare for the next opponent. So most of the time, I remember, like, on away games, say you fly out Saturday and you play opponent A on Sunday. On those flights, they would already prepare for the opponent for the next week. So mentally, they got to be able to shift back and forth, just because you don't have enough time, or they want to be prepared enough and they don't want to waste time to sitting there watching a movie.
Okay, now take us inside the citadel known as, Patriot Kingdom.
All right.
And I have been told by a kid. Do you remember Jake Ingram, the long snapper that you guys had? Okay, Jake played for me at the University of Hawaii. He's one of my favorite kids. I loved him, and I came down to see you guys play the Texans in the game that Wes Welker got hurt, right? Down in Houston. So I'm waiting for Jake after the game, and he comes out, typical Jake. Everybody's got great looking suits and, diamonds on also. He's got a hoodie on and a surf shirt. But I asked him, I said, how you doing? And he goes, I hate it. I said, what? He goes, I hate it. I hate this. I hate pro football. And here was a kid that loved football. I mean, he's a walk-on at the University of Hawaii that worked his way into getting drafted and becoming a long snapper for the Patriots and all stuff. But he said the grind, the mental grind, the constant being tested. He talked about Belichick. He'd be snapping the ball before practice, and Belichick would walk over with a water bottle and all of a sudden just pour water on the ball to make him snap a wet ball. Or he'd ask him he said you'd get asked questions in a team meeting and you better have the answer, because he would just embarrass you in front of your teammates if you didn't have the answer, especially as a rookie. Did you experience any of that?
100% true. But I think it's about your own attitude. He makes you better. So now if we analyze what he just said, yes, let's say you play in the summer in New England. Let's say it doesn't rain a lot. He doesn't want his rookie long snapper to go into a game and never have him snap the ball in the rain. Well, how do you simulate rain? We'll get the ball wet. So, and now it's actually doing him a favor. He's doing it pre-practice not when the entire team is watching you, doing whatever punt and you missed the snap. So I mean, it's not like he's out there to embarrass you or make you cry or anything. I mean, he's literally a good coach trying to make you better. It's tough, no doubt. I mean, it's pro football. It's I don't know, 1,500 athletes that the best in the world in that sport. Well, I mean, competition is high, and I mean, you coach in college, so or CFL, wherever. I think there's a lot of guys that probably want to take your spot and are willing to go through that. So I think it's an attitude thing, but it is tough. It's the league. I think it's the competition is high, and they make you better. And I think iron sharpens iron. I think the tougher the situation. We always said though, he wants to make practice harder than the actual game. So games are almost relaxing. It's like, well, I've been there, I've done that. Well, I've snapped the ball.
All right, now that's a great question. How does he do that though? Not just physically harder, but they got to be mentally harder too, right? You got to adjust faster. You got that way.
Correct, but for example, I remember we played Indianapolis, and we played Freeney on one side and Robert Mathis on the other. Both extremely quick, probably at that point at least the quickest off the ball. I mean, extremely talented defensive ends. And what he would do, he would line up the scout team offside. Which, I mean, it's tough. I mean, there's still, you come out, it's like a scout team, all that stuff. No, they're still NFL players. They can run, they can rush. And now give them an extra yard, and none of us attacking, trying to get by them. And you go in like run mode. And then you get criticized on your technique. I'm like, yeah, the guy is passed by me already in his lineup. But those things, yeah, it's tougher. Like, so you kind of get in the feel of, man, this guy's unblockable. But when you get into the game, obviously he's not superhuman. So he's not going to run, 3.9 on his 40 dash. So he's just trying to over-prepare you for those situations. And I mean, but Freeney and Mathis, they can run. I mean, they're still going to beat you. But you try your best to hang on there. Try to be a street thing.
All right. Now, you talked about what a great guy Tom was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what a great teammate he was. Were you surprised at all by the F-bombs that he got credited with last week in the article that came out about I don't know what team it was that didn't want it? Were you surprised by that?
He is he's like the most passionate, emotional, invested guy in the sport, in his teammates, in all of it. He knows he's good. I mean, obviously he is. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He can win. So, I mean, I get it. I mean, but he's also human. I mean, I don't think he curses. He goes through the street and curses all the time. But I mean, it slips. But he's passionate about it. He knows he can deliver. And I think they're great football players, and they're the greats of the great. And he's obviously he's there.
And I think that's what is one of the things that drives him is to he doesn't forget that he was drafted where he was drafted and was looked at that he was looked at. Hey, when you think about him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember seeing this at practice one time. He threw and hit a receiver right in the back of the helmet, right? The guy, two came off the front side, and he's hot to that receiver, and the receiver didn't look. So Tom just threw it and drilled him right in the back of the head with the ball. And he gave that kid you talk about the stink eye, like they say back in Hawaii, they talk about the stink eye when somebody does something wrong to you. I was like, ooh, that kid better learn right quick. I mean, he was tough on his guys too.
Same. I mean, I remember like in practice, some guy like drove me back a little bit, and I mean, he calls you out on it. It was like, be a man, like stand up for yourself, whatever it is. I'm just, oh God, but I always say like he made me better because I know with him in there or back there, I know we can win. If I do my job, if 10 of us do a job, you don't have to worry about that guy. He will deliver.
Yeah.
So if you give him a chance to throw the ball, if you do your hot rod right, if you block the guy, if you do, whatever it is, I mean, I think it's close to 100% that you're going to win. It's mostly the other guys. Sure, he might have an off day here and there, but most of the time he does not. And don't be the guy. Don't be the guy that causes him not to deliver the ball.
You know what? That's interesting you say that because I've been really fortunate, Sebastian, to coach on teams with 5 different Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks, right? 5 of them. And I remember Doug Flutie was that way. Like everybody knew, as long as you did your job, Doug could make no matter what the score was, no matter what the situation was, no matter what the down and distance, Doug could make a play to help us win. But you had to do your job. And when you get that mentality, that's really something special. That's when a team can really, really be good. So
you go into so the same like the Super Bowl, the one you mentioned earlier, but Seattle, like we were back, and it's like he walks in, was like, let's do it. And you're like, all right. If he says so, let's do it. And that's just how it's going to be.
Hey, now, you saw them this offseason do some things that are not, quote, Patriot-like. They moved up in the draft, to get a quarterback. They spent a lot of money in free agency, which has never been their thing. And interestingly enough, you saw guys like Van Noy, who left for a big payday, come back to New England. Were you surprised by the way they handled the offseason?
No, I think, and I mean, again, I'm not a GM and what do I know, but I think they did it exactly right. I mean, you lost the all-time great. We just talked about Brady, how great he is and what he does to other players in a good way. Now you don't have him anymore. And nothing against Cam Newton or Mac, whoever's going to be in there, but it's hard to replace a guy like Tom. And I've been with him on teams where there were a lot of guys, that he made so much better. Like he is a quarterback that makes you as a lineman, receiver, running back, whatever it is, he makes you better. But so you don't have to spend that money on the offense. So that's what I'm saying. So you pay perhaps the greatest quarterback ever, a marginal, relatively, salary, and you can spend the money elsewhere or save it. But now you don't have that. So you need the elite guys. But I think Bill's going back to like how he won in the past. Have a great defense, low scoring game manager, and be good enough kind of thing. So you don't have to be Tom, bail me out here. It's more like, okay, I might score 14 points and you win.
Yeah, and I think that's the mark of a great coach, when you can do it different ways with different people. And obviously, I think, again, you know him much better than I know him, but certainly I think his competitive nature, his fire, his belief in the process and what they do, I really think they're going to make a jump this year. I think anybody that's, counting them out and saying they're going to be the third or fourth team in that division or whatever, they got to rethink it, because I think that's going to be a good football team.
I don't think you can ever count or bet against Bill. Same, I always say, don't bet against Tom. Don't bet against Bill either. I mean, that man I was fortunate enough just to play under him as a pro, at least. But it's hard for me to imagine that there are a lot of other guys out there that know more, can adjust better to a game than he can. I mean, we have been in games where, the entire game plan is not working the first half. It's like, well, we got 12 minutes to figure this out. We got to talk it over to figure out the entire new game plan, and this is what's going to happen. This is what we're going to do, and you turn it around. It's not like there's so many times where, I don't know, exactly what your opponent's going to do, because that's what they do. They play 3-4, 4-3, whatever it is, and they blitz 13% of the time, and that's it's just their way of winning, which is great. It might work. Bill, I think, is different. He's like, what do I need to do in order to beat them? And I will adjust to that. He's never the same. So as a player, you got to be flexible, but he is, I think they're going to have a great defense. I think with Hightower being back, I think that helps a lot. He's such a force, in the middle of the defense, and such a leader over there. Chung, him. You can't forget the players that opted out last year.
Yeah,
from the get-go, I think it was 6 starters that, it's half your football team. Yeah. Not really, but there's a lot of leaders, Pro Bowlers, et cetera, that just weren't there. that's an impact you can't replace. That happens right before training camp, and it's like, roster set. So, that certainly hurt him. And then, and who knows? I think the quarterback, if let's say, assume that Cam is in there, I think he will be better because he's been in the system for longer. I think they know each other better, all those things. And who knows? Maybe they get a rookie quarterback in there as well. Who knows? But I think they're going to be a good team as well. All
right, I want to go switch gears on you here a little bit and go to something that's it's tough situation to talk about, tough topic to talk about, but it's something to talk about because it's a reality of what everybody that plays the game particularly at the highest level, and as long as you did, needs to take a look at. There was a study done, and it was printed in the New York Times. I think today it came out. They studied 111 brains of ex-NFL football players. 110 of them had evidence of CTE in the examination. How have you addressed that in your own life, Sebastian, and with your own health long term and all that? You've done a great job. How much weight have you lost? You lost what, 60, 70 pounds?
Yeah, I mean, at my heaviest, I was close to 340 pounds. I'm hovering 255, 260 right now. So
I mean, you look absolutely fantastic.
Appreciate it.
You look like an underwear model, but I mean,
you don't want to see me in a Speedo. That's not a thing. That,
well, I know you were in Germany last week, so you probably broke it out. But you know what I'm saying? You've done a great job of getting your weight back where it needs to be, and eating right and taking care. Is there anything you guys do to look out for your brain, for your gray matter?
So one thing to the study, and I don't know if that's the same study, but there had been a study before, kind of the same results, and maybe it's the same one they're talking about. So to the public, obviously that sounds very dramatic, and I think it is. So I don't think you can play this down by any means. However, I think the one thing that needs to be said is that those brains, as far as I know, are being given to study by the wives, kids, whomever, but those they have a reason. So it is probably they already knew something was going on. That man has changed. He played football, all those things. Now he has passed. Let's confirm my fear that he had CTE and he wasn't the man he once was. Yeah. The chances of somebody donating a healthy brain are probably very slim. So I think that most of those brains, they already knew that something was going on. They kind of got confirmation. Right. So I think this just needs to be mentioned. I'm not trying to play this down because it is a real risk, and it's real. And any contact sport, and football is certainly one of them, has a risk. So just to your question, I think, yes. So physically, obviously, we talk about it all the time as a player, because you break legs, ligaments, all those things. You have arthritis. You got to take care of that. For me, I think it's probably not the healthiest way to rock around at 340, 350. I mean, I'm 6'8". There's no need for me to huff and puff going up and down the stairs, or trying to get my daughter, or back then at least, out of a crib, and you can't bend over because your back is certain, all those things. So first thing first was lose weight, like just kind of get it to a somewhat normal level. Diet changes, definitely, and I think the diet changes not only physically help me, but also mentally, from the your fish oils or your healthy fats, the anti-inflammatories for your brain, and they certainly help. I think I was fortunate, and who knows what happens in 20 years. I feel fine, I feel great, but I was so tall, and we played a lot of pass protection, where I didn't get a lot of bull rushes. There wasn't a lot of head-to-head trauma for me. I had a concussion, but still, there's certainly some that have it worse, I would say. But I also feel you cannot live in fear what might happen in 5 years, what might happen in 10 years, because, well, you ruin your present. So if it does happen, it's a shame, it's tragic, all those things. But I think I'm trying to live my life as in, live today. I have 3 young kids, I have a wife, I'm trying to be there for them and all that stuff. And right now I have no issues. I think intellectually you got to challenge yourself still, like learning another language, your mind games, reading, learning a new skill, like all those things. I think when you retire, at what age that is, some people tend to just let it ride, like sit on the couch, whatever it is, but not challenge themselves like they once did. And I think that might be a mistake. I think, again, exercise, all those things definitely play a role.
Obviously I follow you on Twitter, and I mean, you're living the life, man. I'm going to tell you something, man. It's great to see you out doing the things that you're doing with your children and all the traveling that you're doing. Speaking of traveling, my German friend, okay. I got a ein Frage for Sie. All right. Okay. How about that? I dropped a little German on you right there.
Yeah, I know. Now you got to translate for the people.
That means I have a question for you. All right. Germany is now become again, because at one time when you were coming out, Germany was the hot property in all of the world for the NFL. I mean, there was more interest. We had the new head of the NFL in Europe on the show a week ago, and he talked about they feel there are 3 million hardcore, not casual NFL fans, hardcore NFL fans in Germany. Now, we talked earlier about Sebastian's School of German. So we're going to expand a little bit. You're going to become a conglomerate today. And it's going to be Sebastian's Travel Palooza for Deutschland. All right.
Okay.
So you know that what's coming is that the cities in Germany will have an opportunity to bid to become an NFL host city, much like London. All right. So what I want you to do is go around. I'm going to name some cities in Germany, and then I want you to give me your best selling points for why the NFL should go to that city. And we'll start with the oldest city that has a football history in Germany, Frankfurt.
Okay.
Tell me about Frankfurt and why the NFL should go to Frankfurt.
I mean, it's kind of right in the middle with the old Frankfurt Galaxy. I think there's a big draw there. Quite honestly, it's actually not a bad place because like the surrounding areas with the big football population, they're probably in driving distance of 2 to 3 hours. So they would drive a lot of fans there quite a bit. I think just location is pretty good. It's almost right in the middle.
Okay, they have a stadium that would be good enough?
They do have a stadium, a soccer stadium. It's good enough, definitely. Big enough might be the question. Like from an owner's perspective.
We talking Vault Stadium?
Yeah. So it's like, can you know, I mean, whatever, like Patriots, let's say there's 70,000 people in Foxborough, but now you're bringing 50,000 people in there. I mean, that's a big cut to the wallet at some point. So I don't know how that would work, but I think they're good. It's a good city. It's a very Americanized city, I'd say. I mean, it's very industrial, very like, you know, a lot of banks are there. Direct flights for Americans if they wanted to come. I mean, that might be a good selling point, but I mean, I think those tickets will be sold out by Germans pretty quick.
All right, let's get in our BMW or our Mercedes, and let's point north and head up the Autobahn as fast as we can drive to Cologne, and tell me about why Cologne should have an NFL game.
So I think that whole area would be pretty great too. So hey, first of all, they have great beer. People from Düsseldorf probably wouldn't agree right now, which is my hometown. But so it's a big city, 1 million people in there. But also they all have great stadiums just by, you know, the soccer clubs, and I mean they all would work really well. They are awesome people, extremely nice. Not that, you know, we're not sure that relates to the actual football team, but I think they're a great host city. I think every American I've ever met that went to Cologne really loved the city. They walking through there, they just love being there. I mean, it's something about the culture that, you know, I mean, it's the big beer tables. You just sit down, have a little bratwurst and a cold one, and you know, feel right at home.
All right, now we jump back in the car. We head about a half hour, 45 minutes north again to Dusseldorf, which is again where you played your junior football. And tell me why, again, that city should be a host city.
So when I first picked up football, they had the Düsseldorf Rhein Fire, and those stadiums were packed. I mean, there were probably 50,000 people there. It was an event. I mean, that's 20 years ago. They had no idea what football was, but they were fascinated by it. I think there is still a great amount of people there. I mean, obviously, Düsseldorf Panthers, they still have a local team there. Cologne does too, and so does Frankfurt. I mean, they all do kind of. But I think there is just a great push also for the city. I think, quite honestly, what they probably should be doing is like somehow merge all the areas and get all these towns, because like you were saying, it's really not that far. I mean, it's literally across the Rhine, which is the river right there. Just bring them all together and like be a host city somewhere, but get the whole region involved and get even more people. But in the end, like from my perspective, we want the game to be over there. We want to grow the game. Football has given me, I mean, the most amazing life. If I can get one more person, if they want to RBC, to experience the same thing I experienced, I mean, what a blessing. I mean, I would say it all the time, and you know, I know you don't like talking about it, but you got me there to play, right? This is like it's paid us forward. This is an incredible opportunity. And quite honestly, even if you're just a fan, I think I've never tailgated, right? But I think it looks like a heck of a time. Like I just kind of feel like just having a Sunday with your friends and family and doing those things.
Yeah,
That sounds awesome.
It'd be really good tailgating in Dusseldorf, having those alt beers and like
Right.
you say, a bratwurst, and let's go. All right, we're gonna jump back in our cars. We're gonna go straight east. We're gonna get to Hanover and turn north, and go to another German city with an NFL history, Hamburg. Why would Hamburg make a great host city?
Same. I mean, all the ones you named so far, they all have still a great base from the old NFL Europe days. They have a local club team. Extremely nice people, like great host city, good fish sandwiches, if anyone cares. But it's just an overall good place. I remember, like, I was there probably a couple of years ago, and we started flag football league, and just the excitement those kids had just to play. They, again, had no idea really what they were doing, but they all started the league, they participated, they got out, and they're kind of just fans. So I think it's just growing in all those places. And again, I think Hamburg is definitely one of them that has a great old fan base that are looking for it.
All right, now can you imagine Raider Nation in the Reeperbahn? Can you imagine that?
Wow. As for your guys that don't know what that is a street. Just look it up. Maybe don't. Don't look it up. Yeah, no, just don't. Just turn the computer on. It can get wild. I forgot about that part. Yes. But I mean, stay away. Just stay away. Just
all right. We got back in our cars. We're heading southeast to the biggest city in Germany, the capital, Berlin.
Just saying, it's the biggest city, millions of people. Olympia was there. I mean, they know how to host. I mean, it's as international as you can make it, from the foods to, I always call it like the little New York. I mean, obviously it's way smaller and doesn't have all those things, but it kind of has a little bit of the same flair. It's brand new. Obviously got torn down by the war long time ago, but like with the new buildings, everything they have done to that city. I mean, it's beautiful. It's big. It has, I mean, the entire East really, obviously it draws right there. Berlin Thunder back then, again, great team base, but it's big. I mean, it's as big as it gets. So in Germany at least.
All right, you got time for one more trip?
Okay. I do.
Let's hop in the Beamer and go southeast, right? Yeah. And now we're down in Dunkeldeutschland in Munich. Tell me about Munich and why they should host the team or host the game.
Well, I mean, might as well stop by Oktoberfest. So, go make it a real good week. No, it's, again, just, we did in Munich. I went there with, we shot a couple little clips with the NFL, and we were walking through like the big marketplace right there. And I mean, you just, from being recognized to fans to, I mean, you have a football in your hand, people will stop you. They will talk about it. They just love it. You can feel the eagerness in the air. And I think they brought OBJ there a few years ago, like 2 or 3 years ago. He shut down Marienplatz. It's like the big market with a beautiful church right there and all those things. I mean, there were thousands of people. He wasn't announced. He just showed up. I mean, within minutes, maybe 30 minutes. I mean, he was standing on top of a car and there were just people at him throwing stuff, autographs, pictures. I mean, it's like Justin Bieber came to town. It is insane. So they certainly have a love for football there. And I mean, but honestly, it's a beautiful city. But all those you just mentioned are very different and unique. I mean, obviously the Germans, they know they're there, so it's not really for Americans to go there because they got the games here. But they're beautiful cities. Now,
a little bird has told me that you're somehow involved in this whole process. Now, what's going on? Can you give us any information?
Well, I mean, I think it's always been my mission, and a lot of the former guys' mission to get the game over. Well, international. Obviously, I'm from Germany, so my push certainly is for that country itself. So we want, like I was saying, that from when I started playing pro in 2009, we have seen the growth, and you mentioned it earlier, just from which helped with TV. Like, I mean, they're on, regularly on TV. Well, not all the games, but most of the games are on TV. So the fan base has grown. Really, I just want to give back, and I think there's a lot of German players that can play football. I mean, you've seen them; they're big, they're strong. I mean, they're coming, and now in the league, they're way more. I started, and I might have been 1 or 2 during that time, and then slowly more and more came, and now, I mean, it feels like there's a bunch.
Yep.
And so the same goes with the fandom. So certainly the push is getting it over there, and it's for sure happening. We don't know what city yet, so they're making a case for themselves. So I think it's going to be an interesting progress to watch, but the process of them doing it, I think it's even interesting. I think there are going to be some media releases. I think there's going to be, for the fans, something to look forward to. And when we're coming, I think it's going to be a show, and coming with a couple of airplanes and Raider Nation or whoever is coming to town, and we'll deliver.
Keep them out of the Reaper Bond, please.
Yeah,
hey,
that's right.
Now, I get asked all the time, for people. They say, "Tell me about a great football movie. Give me a great football book to read." Talk about your book.
So it's certainly somewhat more of a biography, but there's a little bit more to it than that. It gives you a little bit of an insight to the Patriots organization, but it's also, I mean, really, the title says, it's the story of my NFL career, and it starts off short, but it starts off in Düsseldorf, Germany, all those things, and kind of guides you through. And I think it just gives you some of the coverages that the media really doesn't pick up, and just inside stories and funny. I mean, it's all of it, right? How to deal with injuries, the funny moments, the great moments, the not so great moments. This kind of gives you an overall idea of what an NFL life really is. My NFL life really is. It's probably different than others.
How can somebody get a copy of it?
Just go to Amazon. It's probably the easiest way to do it. And, it's called German Champion, and you can just order it right there.
All right, that's it. Now, again, he's real. As you can tell, my man is humble, but it's a great book. Sebastian shared it with me at the Super Bowl in Miami a couple years ago. Again, it's a fantastic book, and for a father to give to a son, a father to have for himself, a father to give to a daughter, it doesn't matter. It's a great book about life and about his experience in the National Football League, and I recommend it totally highly. Michael, come on out here. We got to get some questions to the big man before we turn him loose.
Hello, Sebastian. How's it going? A couple of questions here before we let you go this morning or this afternoon. Right. Fred in Ireland says, obviously, Sebastian, not many Europeans make the NFL, and even fewer make it to the Super Bowl, let alone win it 2 times. For you in Germany and Europe, what do people in Germany and Europe make of your career? Are you now maybe stopped in the street by the odd NFL fan? Or what's that been like for you?
Yes and no. Me having lost 80 pounds certainly helps. It's not quite as freakish, anymore when I walk through there. But it depends on the setting. It depends on where I am. But it happens less and less, which is personally I enjoy. I have my 3 kids. I enjoy just walking with them and having a good time. And but like I said, I mean, the offensive lineman life, it's the best I can imagine, because you get to experience it all, but you're kind of in the shadows a little bit. Tom Brady can't walk. I don't know. He can't get his own gas because he can't been run down by fans. So I don't have that problem.
We've got one last question here as well, Jeff, for Sebastian. So this is from the Full 10 Yards team in the UK. Did anybody ever manage to pull off a team training prank on Bill Belichick? Has Bill ever carried out a prank, or is he as strict as everybody thinks in that sense?
Also depends on the situation. I think Bill's a funny dude. Maybe not, Super Bowl week. Well, actually, maybe he was. But again, probably doing game day, maybe not. Has he pulled up? Yeah, so I don't think he pranked a lot of people. He was pranked a couple of times, but I think those things.
Whoa. You come on, one. Come on. Just one.
Can do it. Just invite him. Let me say this. Invite Matt Light to your show and let him spill the beans if he has anything to say. So he might have been involved.
You send me Matt's number and I'll get Matt on the show and we'll see about that one. But I will tell you this, fans. There is go to YouTube and you can find this, because one of the things that Belichick will do on occasion, and Sebastian's right, he is very funny. He's dry humor, but very, very funny guy, right? Is he will heat up the jugs machine, which is the machine that they use to shoot balls in the air for the punt returners to catch, right? And I mean, these balls go up in the air now. And he will pick a big guy and he'll put him out there and he say, if you catch it, no sprints today. So you got 65 or 85 guys in training camp that are dying and it's hot and they can get out of sprints and conditioning if the big fat guy can catch the ball. Well, guess who got that opportunity one time? You want to walk us through that whole experience?
So it was even worse, or better either way. So it was, you would get the night off. So you didn't have to go to the hotel.
The night off?
And no meetings after practice. So let's say it's 4 p.m. If you catch the thing, you're going home to your wife and kids. You're not going, stay another 5 hours and go to a hotel and all that stuff. So he's like, Vollmer and Pryor, who was the other fat guy, was like, you don't catch it, there's another chance. So I'm going up there, and I remember Scott looking at me like,
wait a second. How did he pick you? Like, how did he said, all right.
Well, after the clip you're talking about, so I'm going to get to that after. But so he's like, I was like, okay, maybe he thinks I got hands. Maybe I'll go be a tight end. So they're punting the ball. I get it. Scar's looking at me. He was like, hey, because the coaches would have gotten off too. Would get off too. So he looks at me, hey, if you don't catch this, I will effing kill you, right? I got it. So punt the ball. I end up catching it, a bit all wobbly, but it didn't drop on the ground. I got it. I mean, everybody goes nuts. We all go home. Anyway, so a couple years later, NFL Network was there. They had the whole thing filmed, and they filmed Bill as he walking away. And he's like twirling his whistle, and it's like, never would have thought he would catch that. So I was like, he wasn't mad. So he really didn't want me to do it. But he said, hey, and then people come up to him and was like, is this for real? It's like, hey, I told you, if he catches it, you're off. So everybody got a couple brownie points. So it was a good rookie moment for me.
Hey, you must have been the hero of camp, boy.
It was great. I mean, but again, it's like, while funny and all that stuff, he does prepare you for big moments. It's like, hey, I mean, you got to deliver. Block Freeney right now. It's 4th and 10. I mean, do your thing. And that's all part of it, all part of the madness. And I mean, quite honestly, but it helped me kind of not establish. But again, as a rookie, you do get a little brownie points. People are thankful and all the things. And it was great. It was a cool experience.
Well, my man, I tell you what, one of the coolest experiences I get in doing this show is having the opportunity to stay in contact with guys that I love. And you're one of those guys. Always will be.
I appreciate it very much. Very much.
Right.
Anytime.
Well, thank you very much for being on the show. And again, we'll grab you down the road. And I just got this feeling. I don't know where I got it, but I got this feeling that you're going to be deeply involved in this NFL Germany thing. And I think that's awesome.
I appreciate that very much. Sure. We'll see more from each other. I think we got it.
All right, brother. Take care of yourself. Thank you.
You too.
This is the 55th edition of this show. And when it's a special number, you got to bring out a special dude. And we have got a special one for you today. You Denver Bronco fans will remember him as well as Minnesota Viking fans and everybody in the NFC North when he ran roughshod over the NFC North in his Pro Bowl year with the Vikings. Byron Chamberlain, tight end out of Fort Worth, Texas, my man.
Yeah. Fort Worth, Texas for high school.
All right, now, you know what? I do my work. This thing is not scripted, but I do some research, just a little research. And what shocked me, B, is you were born in Honolulu, Hawaii.
I was about to say that my story starts as far west in the U.S. as you can get, Honolulu, Hawaii. Born there, grew up there, and loved it there. From there, we moved to San Diego, California, and then eventually we settled in Fort Worth, Texas. A lot different from those first two places, but it was great moving to Texas for one thing and one thing only. As a kid in Hawaii and in San Diego, I was all about the water sports. I was at the beach every day. And I played a little baseball and played some golf growing up. But when I moved to Texas, I got introduced to this game they call football, man. And if you know anything about Texas, high school football is on a whole nother level. And, I was a kid. I wasn't the biggest kid, but I had a little size on me. I was athletic and coaches saw me and they're like, hey, kid, you're coming out for football. I never played before, but
I'll tell you what, brother, it's a good idea that you did, because I do know this about you. that at the time you were a high school senior in Fort Worth, you were one of the, and maybe the highest recruited receiver in the state of Texas. And to say that is saying an awful lot, because everybody comes to Texas to recruit.
You know, the thing about it was, like I said, I played, ninth grade was my first year of high school. That was my first year playing football. My very first game, I told our mutual friend Nick Ferguson this story. My very first game, I'm out there with, these kids who've grown up playing football. I run the opening kickoff back 95 yards, straight up the middle. Looked like Forrest Gump running, no moves, no nothing, just running straight. But 95 yards on my very first play, the very first game I ever suited up for. And so I just had a lot of success, a lot of early success, and grew in the game of football. And by the time I was a senior, was the #2 receiver in the state of Texas, which is a big deal. The #1 guy was a guy named Kevin Williams, who wound up signing at the University of Miami and playing on those Dallas Cowboys teams that won 3 Super Bowls in the 90s.
All right, now tell me something. When you make this move from San Diego to Fort Worth, right? There ain't no water around you. It's just flat North Texas all around you. But as a kid, like, was there any way of being ready for what you were going to experience in Texas high school football? Because I've been to Allen to watch a high school game, and there's 50,000 people in the stands.
Yeah, and there's no way, and I had no clue what I was getting myself into, and let me take you back, because this is the mid 80s now, okay? So it's still a little bit of old school, and back then you'd come into training before schools even started, and you had 4 weeks of two-a-days in the state of Texas before school even started. So you'd out there in that hot Texas sun doing two-a-days, trying to make the team, and they really, back then, they didn't care. Like, you competed against everybody, so you was just a big mass of people. You could be a freshman, you could be a junior, you could be a senior out there, and there was nothing for you to be competing against a guy who's a junior and you're a freshman. And it was all about making the varsity team. So that's what two-a-days was about back then in the state of Texas. And if you didn't make the varsity, then you got relegated to the JV or the freshman team. But it was the real deal. It was the real deal. And back then, if you're in that hot Texas sun and you're in pads every day and you're hitting every day, and it was like, who's the toughest? I remember that was the mentality. Who's the toughest? Let me find the toughest 45 kids out here to be on the varsity.
Man, I tell you what, that is so true, and it is so hot in Dallas and in North Texas in August. And you probably out there, they're probably making you take salt tablets and no water and the whole thing back in those days.
Yes.
Hey, all right, now
I haven't heard that salt tablet in years, but yes.
Yeah, you had to have gone through that to understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, man, I've heard you say this, but I think it's a great story, and I want you to recount it, because as the #2 high school player in Texas, obviously you got offers from every place in America. I mean, because everybody comes in there to recruit there, but you choose to go to the University of Missouri, which shocked a lot of people, frankly, at that time.
Yeah, I was, I think back then, and I graduated in '89. The University of Miami was definitely on my radar. That's when the U was definitely the U. UCLA was high on my list. Being recruited by Texas, all the Texas schools. I told this story the other day. Barry Switzer from Oklahoma, he came to my high school. And I was like, Coach Switzer, you got a great program, but you're wasting your time, because you guys are throwing the ball 3 times a game, and I ain't coming to block for no triple option. But so, but yeah, like, you're right. Every school, it was a Big 8 back then, Big 10 schools, Pac-10 schools, and I was a really good student as well. So, I qualified academically, so schools didn't hesitate to come whether it was Stanford, UCLA, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Iowa. I'm just thinking of some of the Oklahoma State, some of the schools that were really interested in me from around the country, not just in Texas.
So you choose Mizzou. Why Mizzou?
So here's my thing. One of the things, if you know me, I love to travel. I love going places I've never been before. So I put that as a requirement for a school that I wanted to go to. It had to be in somewhere I'd never been before. Missouri fit that qualification. Growing up, I was very interested in majoring in broadcast journalism. Mizzou was the #1 journalism school. It still is a great journalism school. But the final reason, the football reason, was I had to go somewhere that I knew had a progressive offense and that was going to throw the ball around. And I had watched these coaches at the university. They were at the Texas El Paso, and they got the job. And they recruited me to Texas El Paso, but they got the job at Missouri. And I saw what they did at Texas El Paso, which is definitely not a football school, but they went 10-3 there and won a bowl game. And that was the first time in forever that the University of Texas El Paso had done anything like that. And the way they were throwing the ball around, they played an exciting brand of football. So I get there and I meet this coaching staff, and there was some great young coaches on it. My offensive coordinator was a guy named by the name of Dirk Cutter, who went on to become an NFL head coach. My receiver coach was a guy named Marty Morningwig, who was an NFL head coach with the Detroit Lions, and just a great offensive mind. And the other great offensive mind we had was our offensive line coach, a guy people might know, a guy named by the name of Andy Reid, who can coach him up. Andy can coach him up now. But I met Andy when I was 16 years old, man, and I love that guy, and he's doing a great job in Kansas City. Unfortunately, beating my Broncos every game, but I looked at that staff and the way that got to sit down with them and talk ball and the things they wanted to do with me, how they wanted to use me, and how they just wanted to throw the ball around the yard. And I was like, man, these are some great young coaches, and I want to be with these guys. And the coaches, for the most part, was really the thing that sealed the deal for me as far as going to Missouri.
Well, it's amazing when you think about it, man. That's 3 NFL head coaches, because Marty was the head coach in Detroit, and Andy's had 2 jobs. He's had Philadelphia and Kansas City, and Dirk. On that staff at Missouri at that time, that bunch of coaches, and I believe on the defensive side of the ball, Kenny Flagel was coaching.
Yeah, Ken Flagel, yes, and he was one of the guys that was very active in my recruitment, Coach Flagel, yeah. But I like to give myself credit for being a great judge of talent for coaches, because I really did recognize when I got to sit down with those guys and we got just talk ball. I recognize these guys are good. These guys are special. And I really didn't have those type of conversations with any other, schools that I visited, and just how just innovative they were and how forward thinking they were. And let me tell this one story. That everybody runs it now, but that wide receiver screen where the receiver's out wide, he comes in and gets behind the line and all the blockers. We were running that in 1989 at the University of Missouri, and I like to think those guys invented that play, and that play was unstoppable back then. We get in 4 wides and we bring that outside receiver in, and the line would throw and go, and pick up guys, and we used to score a lot of touchdowns on that. Should have beat the University of Colorado on that 5th down game. That was the play we ran for the what should have been the game-winning touchdown, but we know how that ended.
Hey, they say football is a small world, and it really, really is, because you mentioned Marty Morningwig, and Marty was my quarterback at the University of Montana.
Montana, yeah.
Yeah, and was I'm telling you, you talk about little sawed-off squatty guy like him was a great college quarterback. I mean, he was really, really good. Hey, so 7th round, the draft comes, you get the call, and it's the Denver Broncos on the line, and a very, very good Denver Bronco team. What'd you think when the call came?
So, the thing is, of course, you get all these reports and Mel Kiper's telling you, oh, you're going to go at this round. And all the experts are telling you where you're going to go. And, some guys had told me, that I should be around the 3rd or 4th round, be looking for a call. I think the highest somebody had said had me like it was in the 2nd round. So I knew I wasn't going to go 1st round. But realistically, I thought, okay, 3rd or 4th round, that's where I'm going to probably land. And you're waiting all that time and you don't hear from anybody. And the conversations had started with my mother and my family to my agent. Hey, what are we going to do? What's the plan if he doesn't get drafted? And at that point, I hear my name called on ESPN, and then the phone rings and it's Mike Shanahan, and he's saying, hey, we just picked you, and we're excited to have you here with the Denver Broncos. And for me, man, it was exciting. It was literally like, okay, somebody wants me, The Denver Broncos, they want me. They actually picked me. They want me. And so I was excited. I wasn't, I know a lot of people get disappointed that they weren't drafted as high. I was just excited to have my name called. I knew what a honor and a privilege that was, and I didn't take that for granted. And so, really just celebrated with my family and my agent at the time, and was just waiting to get to Denver for that opportunity to get going.
All right, now, when you show up in Denver, they got a pretty good tight end hanging around that place at that time too, Shannon Sharpe. So, I mean, when you looked at it, your 7th round pick, 200 whatever guy pick,
22nd, 222.
Did you use that as motivation to prove that you belong, I mean, you had a great NFL career now. And
so here's the deal. I was drafted as a receiver. So I came in as a receiver, and we had, Anthony Miller, who was a great receiver. He came over from the Chargers. He's a guy that had like 5 straight 1,000-yard receiving years. Then we had some young receiver, Rod Smith, who was, to me, the greatest undrafted receiver in NFL history. The numbers prove that. Most catches, most yards, most touchdowns by an undrafted guy.
Was McCaffrey? I was going to say, was McCaffrey there at that time?
Ed McCaffrey was there. And then we had Willie Green, who just came over from Carolina. And also Mike Sherrard, who I grew up watching. I was a
kid
fan
from
of
UCLA
when he was at UCLA and first rounder by the Cowboys. But so we had all these receivers, and I was a bigger guy. I still could run, but Mike and his thing, he pulled me in his office and said, "Hey, you remind me a lot of Shannon Sharpe," and he was a bigger receiver too that we made it into a tight end. So. And just so happened that Sterling and Shannon were 2 guys that I followed. I followed him and his brother. They were a couple of my favorites. So when they did that, I was literally, my locker was down with the receivers. And so when Mike asked me to move to tight end, I was all for it. I was just wanting to keep a job. But the thing that I did, you asked me what did I use for motivation. What I really did was I went to Doug West, who was the equipment manager. I said, Doug, they just moved me to tight end. Can you put my locker right next to Shannon Sharpe's locker?
Smart
because
man.
I was like, listen, this guy is doing what on a very high level, on a Hall of Fame level, what I want to do. So he's going to be my mentor, whether he likes it or not, whether he knows it or not. I'm going to sit there and learn, everything I can. So he put my locker right next to Shannon. I was next to Shannon for 6 years. At the beginning of my career, man, and you talking about being a sponge, but the other part of this was Shannon. He was so gracious, and I'll tell anybody this, man, the greatest teammate you could have. And
really?
Shannon said, "Hey, man, they drafted you to kind of replace me, and if you're that good, I'm gonna teach you everything I know because you could help us win a Super Bowl." Those are his exact words. And you don't,
wow.
you've coached in professional ball. You don't get that a lot. You don't get guys wanting to help other guys and say, "Oh, I'm going to help you, and I'm going to mentor you, and I'm going to give you everything I got because you can help us win a Super Bowl." But that was Shannon's attitude. But the other thing was his attitude that I watched too was he's so competitive that he was never going to let me surpass him. He was never going to let me outwork him. It motivated him, I think, and really took his career to a Hall of Fame level after that.
All right, now you guys win 2 there, right? And
Okay.
you mentioned some of the offensive players. You had Slareth and Nayland. I mean, you had great players
Oh my
on
goodness.
offense. But then you go over the defensive side, and there's Trevor Price, Maatanavasa, Romanowski. I mean,
Alfred Williams, Neil Smith,
unbelievable. I'm trying
Steve
to.
Atwater.
Who was the little corner that you had? Because I was in Kansas City in 2001.
Ray Crockett.
Yeah, Ray Crockett was a great.
Right, Ray Crockett was a great leader on our team, and he wasn't the biggest guy, but that was one of the things reason we were so successful. And you asked me about this earlier. We had great leadership on that team. I mean, a guy like Steve Atwater, a guy like Ray Crockett, Bill Romanowski, Neil Smith, who had came over from Kansas City, Alfred Williams, who was a great player at the University of Colorado. You mentioned Trevor, Maatanavasa, Mark Slareth, Tom Nayland, Gary Zimmerman. Oh, what's crazy is Gary gets kind of lost sometimes because he was so quiet. But Gary's a Hall of Fame left tackle and one of the best the game's ever seen. Of course, the guy, pulling the trigger, Elway. And then we had a pretty decent running back by the name of Terrell Davis as well. Terrell, he can get you a couple yards there.
All right, now I'm gonna put it on you, right? There's
Okay.
been, I don't know how many Super Bowls there's been, 50-some Super Bowls, I guess it is. Where do you guys rank in the history of best teams? Because you gotta be in the conversation.
Yeah, I think we got to be in the top conversation. I'd probably put us in anywhere in the top 5 to top 7 Super Bowl champions of all time. And I because when I run down that roster and the Hall of Famers that are on that roster, but not just the Hall of Famers, guys who are low round draft picks that are Hall of Famers. At one point on offense, we only had 1 first round draft pick starting for us, and that was John Elway.
Wow.
We had Terrell Davis, who was a 6th rounder, who was a Hall of Famer. Shannon Sharp, who was a 7th rounder, that was a Hall of Famer. So we had really a Rod Smith, undrafted. Ed McCaffrey was a 3rd rounder. Mark Slareth was a 12th rounder. Tom Nayland, who should be in the Hall of Fame, 7th rounder, All Pro center. So you look at that, and then I look at our body of work, man. We went and we went 13 games that year before we lost our first game. And there were talk and thoughts of, you got 3 games left, you could possibly go undefeated and be the, at the time would have been the 2nd team other than the 72 Dolphins to go undefeated. Right. We know that didn't happen, but the way we just dominated teams, whether it was, with our running game with Terrell Davis, or and what the funny thing is, we played that Super Bowl against the Falcons, and they said, okay, we're going to stack the box and we're going to stop Terrell Davis. You're doing that, and you're putting the game in the hands of John Elway, one of the greatest ever. And
good
he
luck.
threw for then at the time it was the 2nd most yards in Super Bowl history, and he walks away his last game with the MVP. Just however you wanted to do it, we could do it. We could run it down your throat. We could give the ball to John and say, John, throw it around the yard and let's go. And our defense, to me, was the most underrated thing that we had, and they were good. And if you look in our playoff run, we played the Dolphins. They scored 3 points. We played the Jets. They scored 1 offensive touchdown off a turnover where they got the ball on the 1-yard line. And then we basically shut Atlanta out until 2 minutes left in the game before they scored their first offensive touchdown. The way they performed in the playoffs was something special. It wasn't 85 Bears special, but it was special.
That's pretty good. That's pretty special right there. All right, now this one I've been waiting to ask you all day. All right, because I missed you by months. because I was in NFL Europe with the Ryan Fire working for Galen Hall in '95 when we brought the league back. Then I left, and you came in there in '96. Now, how did you get? Now, it wasn't just because you wanted to travel. How did you get to NFL Europe?
So I was drafted in '95, and I remember I tell you I was drafted as a receiver. Well, going into that, after my rookie year, that's when Shanahan told me he wanted to switch my positions to play tight end. And I'd played a little bit tight end during my rookie year, but I was always the stand-up guy. I never had my hand in the dirt. I was always the motion man. We called it the second tight end, the tiger. So you're mostly the guy that's in motion, or you're lining up in the slot, but you're a tight end, or you're lining up on the wing. And so he was like, I want you to get some experience. And back then, you could be, if you were signed to an NFL team, you could be allocated by your team. And so the Broncos allocated me over there. And it's a smart thing on there. It was a chance for me to go and play some tight end, make my mistakes without costing the Broncos any games or whatever. Because, it was a new position. It was my first time putting my hand on the ground. And from playing ball, like blocking as a receiver and blocking as a tight end, two different animals. And when you got that defensive end on the 7 technique lined up, and you got to move him out the way on your own, that's a whole nother deal.
Hey, you thought you were back in Fort Worth and finding out who's the toughest. You got to get in there and do that. Hey, exactly. So you go over there and you tear it up, and I mean tear it up. One of the things I found out about you was you led the league in receptions, and you scored 8 touchdowns in 10 games.
Yeah, 9 and 10.
But the thing that was surprising to me, Byron, and you did this numerous times in your NFL career, you averaged 12 yards of reception, and that's big. That's big for a tight end, especially in those days for a tight end. So
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So when you look at your career now, and you see what they're doing with tight ends today, what kind of numbers could you hang today?
Oh my goodness, man! I would love to be in the league right now, especially with the way the rules are written now. As far as the thing about it was back then, that's how you earned your stripes as a tight end, was catching that ball across the middle and taking that hit, and knowing that somebody like Derek Brooks or John Lynch was coming to tattoo you. And that's how you gain respect with your teammates. That's how you gain respect around the league. And the way the rules are written right now, it's like they've taken all those big hits across the middle. So I think I could have did some damage. There was one year where I led our entire team that goes at 15.7 yards a catch.
Yeah.
And definitely led every tight end in the NFL. But that was my thing. I could get down the field, make something happen. Whether you want to run me down the seam, run down the post, or just work the middle. But the other part about that was, and we did a lot of this in Denver, is we ran a lot of 2 tight end sets. And naturally, when you go 2 tight ends, the defense goes heavy. They bring in the extra linebacker. Well, you had guys like me and Shannon Sharp, and we'd spread those guys out. And, you got all these linebackers on the field trying to cover in space. And then, I think we were one of the first teams to really take advantage of athletic tight ends like that. Now that's just the game.
Yeah.
You got guys like Travis Kelce playing wide out, basically. You got, the kid in San Francisco, who I love. I absolutely love him. George Kittles. The kid from the Raiders, Waller.
Yeah.
And these guys are athletic guys who can run, who can take advantage of those mismatches. So if you're going to bring that extra linebacker on the field, you're going to have problems.
Okay, now let's talk about a tight end, right? And he's the guy that everybody coveted in the draft. And he probably is as close to what you were coming out of Missouri as there is today. Kyle Pitts, the first round draft pick of the Falcons.
Yes.
What's the ceiling for him? What do you think his ceiling is?
I mean, the thing about it is, and everybody talks about, well, he doesn't block. Man, that's not the game anymore. That's not the game. Literally, when I came in the league, guys were playing tight end at 270, 275, and they were extra tackles. Now you want the guy that looks like him, who can run 4.4, and they'll teach him. They'll teach him how to block, and they'll put him on the backside of runs and let him block linebackers. But when he is an absolute matchup nightmare. And what do? I mean, you're going to bring a smaller guy who's a third or fourth corner in to cover him, because that's what you're going to have to do to speed-wise to keep up with him. But he's going to muscle that guy all day in the running game. Are you going to bring in a safety? And with most safeties, they're more run supporters. They may be strong as him, but they're not going to be able to run with him. They're not going to be able to follow him all around the field. And I remember something we used to do when you go one with one tight end and three wides. You put those three wides on one side and put that tight end over there by himself. You're going to put your number one corner on him. And now you got your number 2 or 3 corner on your starting receiver, or you're going to walk that linebacker out there, let him cover Pitts one-on-one. It's like I said, matchup nightmare. Just so many things you can do with this guy, and I think he's the next superstar waiting to happen at the tight end position.
All right, now for our Bronco fans out there, and we got a ton of them, right?
Okay.
They took Fant a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really high expectations for him to be that big play, athletic tight end. Where do you see him right now in his development, Byron?
Yeah, so he's shown some of that. I remember the catch he had on opening day. What was that, last year? I remember the catch he had against Cleveland, literally coming across the middle, catches it and goes down the sideline almost 80 yards. So he's shown some of that ability. I think the fact he's struggled because of the development of the quarterback. I think that's kind of hurt him. And we can talk about that quarterback too, because he's my guy too. But they didn't have a full off season with the COVID thing. He only started 5 games a year before, so he's going to develop. But I think as that quarterback develops, you'll see more and more out of Noah Fant. I love him as an athlete, as a tight end. He's big enough to get it done in the running game as well. I think that's the glaring weakness of his game. Like you got to get that cleaned up to be, to considered like just an all around tight end.
Right.
The other move that I like that the Broncos did was bringing in my guy from Missouri, Albert Okwuegbunam, at tight end. And he got hurt this year, but I think those two as a combo, as a 2 tight end duo, they have potential to be to be very, very special. I can see them using both of those guys like the way Shanahan used me and Shannon Sharp at the same time.
All right, now let's talk about another Missouri Tiger who has shown flashes, but he's also shown flashes the other way. We got Drew Lock in his NFL career is thrown 16 touchdowns and 15 interceptions. Yeah. Is he good enough? Is he the guy, Byron?
Well, you know what? Let's because numbers, you can always look at numbers, but just let's look at his journey and to where he is where he is now. Because I think this is what will tell the tale. He started 5 games his rookie year, the last 5 games. Came and played pretty decent. I think he went 4-1 in those 5 games. Then you get COVID comes. So you don't have the complete offseason. You're really not working with your guys. It's hard. You're a rookie now. It's your second year, but you're sitting at home doing Zoom calls, literally. You're not getting that on the field connection with your receivers, your tight end. So he comes into the league, his number 1 receiver automatically. Cortland Sutton goes down in training camp. His number 1 guy's out. You bring in Jerry Jeudy, who's a rookie. You bring in KJ Hamler, who's a rookie, and you're asking these guys to step up and be the guys. Well, they're rookies, and we all know just because whatever you did in college means absolutely zero in the NFL. And so you're going to have a learning curve. You're going to have struggles. And I watched the games where, Judy, matter of fact, when they played out here, the LA Chargers, Judy dropped at least 4 balls. He dropped or 2 that were touchdowns. I never saw him do that at Alabama. But you get into the NFL and those lights, and it's a different animal. So I look at that with a grain of salt. I also look at all the injuries that was had up front on the offensive line. Fast forward to now. Okay, he's had an entire offseason. He's got guys that are now, Judy, Kamler with experience now. You got Sutton coming back. To me, this is the year that you really evaluate him and you really see what you got. And if he does not step up this year, this is where you got to start thinking about. And I see they brought an insurance policy in, Teddy Bridgewater, which, I like that kid before he got hurt. Right. And so, but to me, this is the year that is really good to me, going to make or break Drew Lock. And this is the year like, okay, you got all the pieces now. Your weapons have experience now. You've had an entire offseason to work with these guys. Your offensive line on paper is a little bit better than you've had. Now let's see what you do from here going forward. Now let me say this, and I'm a little biased because I love the kid. I love the kid. He's a Missouri kid. His dad, Andy Locke, was my captain on my team.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Andy was our starting offensive guard, and he was a captain. He was a very good player. He was a very reliable guy and a guy that was dependable. You knew exactly what you were going to get every time from Andy Locke, and he was a great leader. And so I'm partial to the kid. I want to see him succeed. And I think what they have on offense, the weapons they have on offense, what they got coming back on defense, the kid that they drafted out of Alabama, Patrick Surtain, played against his father. Von Miller coming back healthy. Chubb coming back healthy. Some of the moves that they've made in the secondary. This could be a really good season for the Broncos. Let me just say, I'll be the first to go on record to say that. Now, now let me say this too. But you got Kansas City in that same division, yeah. So it's going to be a tall task, man.
Yeah, that's always been a great division. The teams that hate each other and great rivalries and all that. Michael, come on out. Let's get a couple questions we'll keep him here all night.
Yes, sir. Fellow Broncos fan here, so I'm going to try and not be biased either. So I'll say no, and I love what you're saying, no, Brian. Byron, there's a comment here from Fred, who's in Ireland, saying I think he sort of touched on it, but maybe if you want to add to it, being a 7th-round pick and getting drafted in his 200s, how much of a validation was it to win 2 rings, and how did those wins set you up for your post-football career?
Great question. It was always a goal of mine. I set pretty small goals. My first goal was just to make the team as a 7th-round pick. But making the team and being an integral part of those teams that won the Super Bowl, it was validating. It was, hey man, not only do I belong in this league, I can excel in this league, and playing with the teammates that I mentioned before, all these all pros and Hall of Famers, and to be competing alongside them and them depending on me, like it really made you feel validated. It made you feel good. Like, okay, yeah, I do belong in this league. I am one of those special type players.
Great. Got another one?
Yeah, we got one more in the Broncos. It's from David in Cambridge in England. What are your thoughts on George Payton? I know you touched on Drew Lock there, but obviously a new era in Denver.
I can't hear you. What was the question? I'm sorry.
What are your thoughts on George Payton?
I've seen the moves that they've kind of made, and I don't think right now that they've made any bad moves. Obviously, we have to see how some of these transactions work out on the field. I think the best thing they did was try to shore up that secondary. I think Patrick Surtain he's a special guy. He's a special player. And that's something that we lacked last year. No matter how much pass rush you get or don't get, we just didn't have guys that were sticking to their mans and covering their guys. So I think he brings that. I think he's going to be a special player. And we'll see what the rest of the guys that we've made transactions and how the rest of these draft picks pan out.
You've been really cool, giving us a bunch of great time. Before we let you go, tell everybody what you're doing now. What is Byron Chamberlain up to out in LA? Movie stars, big cigars, fancy cars, and all.
Not no movie star. I do got a fancy car, but not a movie star. The thing that I'm doing now is I'm working for a couple different companies. One in particular is called Max Sports International. And we travel around the world and we introduce the game of when you go international, you got to say American football, because football international is a different sport. But we do that. Of course, the pandemic kind of set us back, but we're doing a lot of good work over in South America and Central America. Right now, we're preparing to go to Africa. We're preparing to go to Uganda and Nigeria and work over there. And for us, it's all about spreading the gospel of football, man. And I think it's the greatest sport ever invented. And just trying to develop, talent around the world. The thing is, I think I look at the NBA and what they've done with their game. And it's truly, when you watch the NBA draft, it is an international event. And you got guys from Croatia, from France, from all over being drafted into the NBA. And they've done a great job of globalizing their game. And that's what that we're kind of doing with Max Sport International, just being ambassadors for the game, trying to develop our game and trying to grow it internationally.
Well, come on over to Europe. Help
I've
us
been
grow
there.
our game.
I've actually done some work. We did some work in Canterbury, England, out over in Kent, and we've done that. And we worked with Christchurch University over in Canterbury. We worked with some of the local schools as well with the football curriculum over there. So,
well, that's awesome, man. It's great to have guys that have gotten so much from the game, given so much back to the game, and I really
and that's
congratulations
Jeff.
For that.
Jeff, that's the biggest thing I tell people, man. I've learned so much from this game, and literally, this game helped me from a boy to become a man. And I've started playing this game when I was 14 as a boy, and until the age of 34, 35. So I really learned a lot of lessons, and those lessons, those things that you need to be a successful football player, to be a successful teammate, are the lessons that I want to give to kids around the globe.
Keep doing it, brother. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for coming on today. Byron Chamberlain, All-Pro and Super Bowl champion.
Thanks for having me, man. Anytime.
All right.